So for more on the implications of Trump's proposed tariffs and how Canada might respond, we're joined by Lawrence Herman. He is an international trade lawyer and a former Canadian diplomat. He's also senior fellow at the C.D. Howe Institute. And Lawrence Herman joins us now from Toronto. Appreciate you, sir, taking the time to talk to us. Thank you. So let me just ask you, we have Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly stating that everything is on the table, including energy export restrictions. Can you walk us through who has the legal authority to impose such measures, and how might this vary between federal and provincial jurisdictions?
Yeah, sure. To the extent that this is a legal and not a political issue, let's talk about that. There's no doubt that the federal government has the full constitutional legal authority to control exports and imports. There's no doubt about that. It's a constitutional provision, and there's a statute, there are several statutes that give the federal government, and when I talk about the federal government, I mean the federal cabinet, give the federal cabinet the full and untrammeled authority to apply import and export controls. Import controls by way of tariffs, tariff surcharges, that's the federal government's sole responsibility. Export controls as well. Provinces are not entitled to act in matters of international trade and Canada's external relations. That's quite clear constitutionally. But I think, as the report has shown, this is also a very intense political issue. And the challenge for Canada is to stick together and to show that there is political cohesiveness in responding to what is going to be a devastating series of tariffs applied by the Trump administration. There's no doubt about that.
So you think this is happening, that this is absolute, these tariffs are coming, it's 25% across the board? Is that what you're kind of implying?
Well, I don't have any particular insights into the Trump administration, but from what he said, it doesn't seem to me to be possible that he's going to back off on this threat. He made it quite clear, 25% across the board. He may say that Canada has enacted some border measures, and so he's not going to apply the full scope of tariffs. But I think we have to prudently plan on dealing with a broad scope application of U.S. tariffs. Contrary to everything the U.S. has agreed to internationally, contrary to the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, but nonetheless, those tariffs are coming. We have to plan on that.
So we have to plan on that. What do you think the federal government should do in response to those tariffs? Well,
you're asking me to engage in political speculation, but look, I think Canada should enact the strongest possible countermeasures. We have to, look, the game is inflicting maximum pain. We have to inflict pain on the Americans to get them to back off as much as possible. Now, that being said, contrary to what seems to have been reported in the media, we don't have to put all those tariffs on initially. We can stage them. The federal government can put on a group of tariffs initially and tell the Americans that additional tariffs may be coming. The same thing with export controls. There's been a suggestion that we could apply export controls, and by the way, it's within the federal government's authority to do that, on energy, on electricity, on other things. We don't have to take that step immediately. We could apply export restrictions on, say, critical minerals or some critical minerals, but make it clear that there may be more export controls unless we see the U.S. side backing off on the devastating tariffs.
So it's interesting because this is kind of a new, because we have heard from Doug Ford. He did suggest weeks ago about cutting off electricity. I think it's 1.5 million American customers that are supplied with Ontario electricity. But that would require the federal government to sign off on. But you're saying, well, maybe it's just not, let's not go there yet. Let's think about some targeted 25% tariffs, say on Florida orange juice, maybe an export ban on critical minerals, but that this has to be kind of a staggered approach in terms of how long these tariffs last?
Yeah, I think that is a a prudent approach, a strategic approach. We put on the tariffs on imports from the United States that we think will cause the maximum pain, if I can put it that way. And we tell the Americans, as Minister Joly has said, everything is off the table, and we will follow through as necessary as long as the Trump tariffs stay on. We don't, as I said, have to put every countermeasure on the books all at once. They can be staged, and there can be indications that more will be coming down as long as the U.S. tariffs stay on. When I say more will be coming down, I mean more tariffs and possibly export controls on things like critical minerals, energy, electricity, and other things that the U.S. highly depends on from Canada.
What about when you hear from the Premier of Alberta, who says that if you were to put some kind of export ban on Alberta energy, oil and gas, that would create a national unity crisis in this country?
Well, as I said, this is more than a legal and constitutional issue. It's a political issue, and it has to be handled very, very carefully and with a lot of sensitivity in Canada. What is important, though, at this stage, is that Canada should be speaking with one voice. I don't think it helps for different premiers to be delivering different messages to the United States. That just plays into Donald Trump's hands. I think we have to avoid that and speak as much as possible with one voice. It is very damaging for Canada to be showing disagreement, disarray at this critical time in our history. And it is a critical time. There's no doubt about that.
Lawrence, thank you. Lawrence Herman is an international trade lawyer and former Canadian diplomat.